And today we're going to look at the toxicology of relationshipology. Here we know that just like good people can make us better, like life-giving relationships can add joy and value to our life, dysfunctional relationships can totally mess us up. So with these relationships, some are life-giving, some are not going to be helpful at all. Now the right people, what they're going to do is they're going to lift us up, they're going to encourage us, they're going to support us, they're going to equip us, add value to our life. The wrong people, what they're going to do is they're going to distract, they're going to add toxic to our life, they're going to be destructive for us. Now, I want you to think of someone that you believe might be toxic in your life. Just think of a person that when you see him, you get knots in your stomach. Someone who has not been kind to you over the years, someone that you don't get, someone that you don't understand. Someone that you've had some disagreements. Now think about that person. Oftentimes we're going to find that this person is going to be critical. We're going to find that this person is going to be griping, a complainer. They're going to be negative. And now, generally, do you like being with this person? Does this person make your life better? And for most of us here, the answer is going to be no. Now, I want to just be really clear what toxic is. Okay, so here's the definition of toxic. Toxic is anything containing poisonous material capable of causing sickness or even death. So when we think about toxic, we should think pharmaceutical stuff or things we breathe or whatever. But as we talk about toxic this morning, what I want to do is think about toxic people and what that means. What that means is these people are capable of causing us sickness. Now, when I say sickness, I'm not necessarily talking about physical sickness, although that could happen. What I'm talking about is this emotional sickness, this relational sickness, and if we are anxious because of somebody, if we're depressed because of somebody, if our heart is broken because of somebody, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, and it's real. Now, let's go and look at what Paul says about toxic people. He says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. He says, "Do not be misled." Now, I want you to read these next 5 words with me. Can you do that? So let's read this together. Bad company corrupts good character. Now, do you guys believe that? You guys are better than the first crowd. I was reading poetry to a wall there. They were still sleeping. I was do you believe it? And I had to threaten to filibuster, and they finally started participating. But so it's right. I used to be a youth minister. I was a youth minister for 6 or 7 years, and this is a verse I would lift up to the kids all the time. I'd tell the kids, seriously, one of the most important choices you're going to make, during your time as a junior high student, during your time as a high school student, during your time as a high school student is the company that you keep. It really is. Good people are going to make you better. And I believe that bad company is going to corrupt good character. I was thinking of a time in my life, I was hanging out with these 3 or 4 guys when I was a sophomore in college, and they were kind of characters. They'd like to get in trouble every once in a while, and I was this perfect angel that never got in trouble. Why are you laughing? The previous, never mind. So anyway, they had this bright idea that they were going to go play paintball. Now, paintball was actually pretty new, in the late 1980s. So we were going to go to this park, and I just knew that this I was 10 o'clock at night. I knew that there was nothing good that was going to come from this, but I wanted to hanging out with them at a park, having fun, getting into trouble possibly, was a lot better alternative than staying home in my dorm room reading American political philosophy thought or something like that. So we went out there, and it was at this park. It was about 5 miles from the school, and I'm guessing it was 10:30 by this point, and totally dark, October. I'm standing behind this tree, so my friends can't see me. We're all trying to shoot each other. We're dressed in black, and I got this big gun. Paintball guns are actually pretty big, and all of a sudden there was 2 cars that came from the other side of the park, and they shined their big bright lights on me, and it was 2 police officers, and drop your weapon. I'm no, dude, it's a paintball gun. We're playing. Drop your weapon. So they came, and I've never been arrested before, but I have been detained, and this was the night I was detained. They actually threw me against this tree and put the cuffs on me and all this sort of stuff, and I had to they didn't take me. I had to walk home wearing all this black stuff and carrying this gun. It was kind of weird walking down University Avenue. But I finally got back. My friends, they just deserted me. I mean, they were out having hamburgers and fries and milkshakes and laughing at me. And like the next 8 Sundays, I had to go clean this park up for like 8 hours, and it was like this, So here's the deal: like, bad company corrupts good character. Now this is kind of a funny story, but I could have actually shared with you some pretty serious ones, and I have a feeling pretty much everybody in this room could come up and give a testimony about how bad company will corrupt good character. I said this last week, we generally don't get into trouble alone. It happens with other people. Now, words are gonna have a huge effect on our emotional and relational health. The words that healthy people use are going to be life-giving, they're going to be holy, they're going to be encouraging. And I want you to think as you speak, are those your words? Are they life-giving? Are they holy? Are they encouraging? And then I want to talk about like the not so encouraging words, the not so uplifting words, the critical words. So let's listen to what Paul writes to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 16. Here's what he says. He says, avoid godless chatter. It's more commonly translated into the word gossip. This translation says, avoid godless chatter, because those who indulge in it will become more and more ungodly. So here's another place where, I was just thinking this week, like this is a place where bad company can really corrupt good character. I think we can find ourselves in negative environments where people are saying words that they're not life-giving, they're not holy, none of that stuff. This is, I was thinking there's a woman, this is like 3-4 years ago, she called me up. I remember it was a Wednesday, and she wanted to meet, and I said, yeah, I can meet, let's just schedule something. And she says, well, I really need to meet today. I got to make a big decision today. I looked and I said, yeah, I'm free until 11:45, so why don't you just come this morning? And she came this morning, and she was really nervous, and I said, well, what's going on? And she says, well, I got a big decision to make, and I got to make it today. And I said, well, what's your big decision? And she said, the big decision is whether I should go to Bunko tonight or not. And they did laugh at that one at the first service. So it's like, you guys are like schizophrenic. You got to be consistent with how you laugh. These services are killing me. Bad part is I got to do it tonight again at 6 o'clock. So what was I talking? Bunko, that's what I was talking about. So I can see she was serious about this. I mean, this was a big deal to her. She was visibly shaken by this, and I said, well, can you tell me why you don't want to go to Bunko? And she says, well, there's 2 or 3 women there that they just start talking and gossiping, and I know some of the stuff they're saying is not true. I know some of the stuff they're saying is really hurtful, and even this true stuff, it just it seems like they're happy that someone else is failing or hurting, and it's not a good environment for me to be in. So like any pastor would say, I said, well, what do you think you should do? And she says, well, I don't think I should go. And she says, can you pray for me? I said, I can pray for you. I mean, that's not a problem, but I think I can do something better for you. I'll just sit here while you pick up your phone and give somebody a call and tell them you're not coming tonight. And she said, well, these are my friends. And I said, well, they can be your friends at other times, but it doesn't sound like this is a good environment for you to be in. There's 2 or 3 people here that, they're corrupting your good character. She called them up and said, she wouldn't be there. She actually left the group. And she later told me, she says, there's 3 or 4 people in there that I really like, and, we're still friends. And, I don't miss this. I don't miss the negativity. I don't miss the criticism. I don't miss, the untruths. I don't miss this stuff. She doesn't miss the toxicity. She doesn't miss the poison that leads to sickness. Now, listen to what happens when you do this. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 17 is the next verse. Their teaching will spread like gangrene. I looked it up. This is the only time the word gangrene is mentioned in the Bible. Do you know what gangrene is? I have a picture. No, I'm not going to show you a picture. It's really gross. Gangrene is basically blood stops flowing to your appendages. Your fingers will turn black and they'll die because there's no life that goes to them. Your feet can be amputated or toes can be amputated because of gangrene. Now think about this. Paul says their teaching will spread like gangrene. So what's going to happen is to our soul, to our relationships, to our emotions, life is going to stop flowing to these critical and essential areas of our life. Because this stuff, it just messes us up. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at 4 types of toxic people, okay? You can think of more, and I thought of more as well. We only have so much time here, so I wanted to hit what I thought were going to be the major ones. So the first one is going to be the negative person. Now, does anybody in here know a negative person? Like, isn't it tough to really be around a negative person for more than like 5 seconds? It's just tough. Now, negative people, they're going to be judgmental, they're going to be critical, they're going to complain, and here's what's happening. If you've ever met a negative person, like here's what's going on inside them. They have unconsciously decided that negativity and pessimism is going to protect them from getting hurt. You know, they look at the world and they have these really, really low expectations. And the lower the expectations they have, the less likely it is that they're going to be disappointed. Now, that may work for them, but I'll tell you what, it sucks the life out of everybody who is around them. You know, we hang out with these negative people, and pretty soon their negativity becomes our negativity. Now, Moses knew what it was like to hang around negative people. Like, he had all these slaves in Egypt who are now in the wilderness, and the wilderness wasn't bad compared to where Egypt was. It's not as good as what Israel was going to be. It's not as good as what was promised to them, but they got so negative. They would say, you know, back in Egypt we had fish and we had fruit and we had all this bread, and they didn't have fish. They didn't have vegetables. They didn't have bread when they were in Egypt. But they had mastered like this art of negativity. Now, the second one we're going to look at is the controller. Now, does anybody know anyone that's a controller? Anybody sitting by anybody that's a controller? You wouldn't be brave enough to have mentioned if you were, but there's got to be at least one of you who are, because I can look out here and I can see some of you. They didn't laugh at that the first one. You guys are good. You get out 2 minutes early today just for that. Not sure what I'm going to cut out. So the controller, like what's going to happen here is they're going to be demanding, they're going to be overbearing, they're going to be like manipulative, they can even be abusive. What they're going to do is they're going to use fear or guilt to get their way. Now, here's what's going on here. Beneath every controlling person is an insecure person. What they're going to do is they're going to try to get things their way, to increase like their own security. And when they lose that security, I mean, put a controlling person in a position where they have no control, and you're going to see a train wreck. You really are, because their insecurity is going to just emerge. Now, the third one is going to be the narcissist. Now, this is a narcissist is going to be someone who values themselves over anybody else and everybody else. So here you might want to insert like the word arrogant. That would be another word. And what's going to happen here is most of the time they're going to let you down when you need emotional support because they value themselves more than they value you. Now, oftentimes you're going to disappoint them because you're not going to meet their high expectations of their needs being met. Social interactions for a narcissistic or an arrogant person are going to be something like this. What can this conversation do for me? What can this friendship do for me? It has nothing to do with what I can do for you, because the world revolves around the narcissistic person. It's going to be very difficult for this arrogant person to show genuine affection. Now, there's going to be a big difference between like confidence and arrogance. Confidence is going to inspire. You're going to look at a confident person and you're going to say, that is really cool. That person has overcome. That person has achieved, despite their circumstances. They're still hanging on. That's really cool. That's confidence. Arrogance or narcissism, it's going to be intimidating. And what's going to happen is they're never going to celebrate. The narcissistic person is never going to celebrate your confidence because it gets in the way of their arrogance. Now, the last one we're going to look at is the gossiper. And I do want to revisit this one because I think this is huge. I think it's huge. I hear it. I was actually working on this at Panera earlier this week, and I was sitting next to this table with 4 or 5 women, and there was some serious gossiping going on. They were saying stuff that I didn't think was kind. I had no idea if it's true or not, but it was not good stuff. Now, gossipers are going to enter a conversation for information. That's what they want. They don't want to understand. They don't want to emote. They want to get information. Now, what they'll do is they'll elevate themselves by bringing other people down. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. Long term in life, this is not the way that you elevate yourself. You don't elevate yourself by bringing people down. You elevate yourself by lifting people up. Like that's how you make it in life. If you want a life of significance, you get better because you've made someone else better. That's how it works. Now, here's the deal. You have to relate to toxic people. Toxic people are in this world. They are all over the place. We cannot emerge, or we can't disengage from the world. We have to live in the world that we live in. So here's what we do. Number one is we stay spiritually healthy. We have this growing, flourishing relationship with God, and then we have people in our life. And last week I said you don't need to have more than 2 or 3 or 4 people in your life who are committed to your growth, people who are committed to your well-being. Now, then and only then, what we get to do is we get to live out the gospel to these toxic people. It's kind of like if you're on an airplane and you're in an accident or there's some kind of problem in the cabin. What's the first thing they tell you to do? It's to put on the breathing mask. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself before you can help somebody else, and that's what we're going to do this morning. So the first thing that we're going to do as we deal with toxic people, now you're going to deal with complainers, you're going to deal with negative people, you're going to deal with narcissistic people, you're going to deal with controllers. That's just the way it is. That's life. That's the United States. It's Omaha in the year 2015. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set healthy boundaries with toxic people. Okay, so think of a boundary as a fence. It's going to, my neighbor and I, we like each other. He's a good guy. But we have a fence between our yards. He has a big black dog. I have a bigger black dog. If we didn't have a fence, there would be problems. I still like him. He still likes me. But we have this fence that says our dogs can go this far, but they can go no further. Now, a boundary is going to be that way as well. A boundary is basically going to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the bad out of my life, and I'm going to keep the good in my life. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a fence that's going to keep the good in and the bad out. Now, I want you to go back to that person, or maybe you've thought of somebody else, that you kind of struggle with, someone else that you might think is putting in some toxins in your life. I want you to go back to that person. Now, here's how we can set a boundary with them. Here's how we can do it. You can say 3 things. Number 1, you can say, I'm not going to let you talk to me, or I'm not going to let you treat me that way. So let's just say there was somebody in your family that was just having a terrible day. Let's even say they were having just a terrible week, okay? And let's say then what they do is they take out their frustration on you. Well, if you would have done this, then this wouldn't have happened to me. Okay, here's how you set the boundary. You look at them and you say, okay, I know this has been a really tough week for you, but I'm not going to let you talk to me that way because I care about myself enough and I care about you enough that I'm just not going to deal with this. It might be if someone is trying to control you. If it's at work, it's in your neighborhood, whatever. You just look at the person and say, you're trying to control me. I am not going to let you treat me that way. A controlling person, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to create you into the person that they want you to be. A grace-filled person is going to say, okay, I'm going to help you be the best you that you can be. I'm not going to deal with the control. I'm going to say, I'm not going to let you treat me this way because I care too much about myself. Now, the next one is going to be, the next thing we say is, I'm not going there with you. When I was a youth minister, I used to say this all the time. I'm not going there with you. If you're a sophomore in high school and the kids are going to a party and there's no good at this party, you know what you say? I'm not going there with you. If alcohol has been a problem for you and you're an adult and you know that there's going to be all this stuff and it's going to be a huge temptation for you, what do you say? You say, I'm not going there with you. I thought the woman with the bunco, she did an excellent job. She didn't want to be in this environment where all this gossiping, where all this negative talk was going on. She basically said, I'm not going there with you. Now, the third thing that we say, actually the third thing that I would say is don't attend all the arguments that you're invited to. Just don't do it. There's going to be people that invite you into arguments and don't go there. You don't have to accept somebody else's invitation into an argument. A lot of times, what's going to happen is, we argue differently. I'm a very emotive person. When I discuss things, it's usually from my heart. Sometimes I'll struggle to communicate with someone that, is a very cognitive, logical person. So I'm not going to get in that type of argument. I'll say, maybe I'm not going to argue with you, but I will talk. If you promise to listen to me, to understand, and I'll promise to do the exact same thing, then we can have a conversation. But I'm not going to go down this road of who's right and who's wrong, because the answer is probably going to be somewhere in the middle anyway. So that's how you're going to set these boundaries with people. Now, the problem with boundaries is that, like, I can put a fence between me and my neighbor's yard, but he's a pretty strong, athletic, tall guy, and he can actually jump over that fence. So most of the time, the boundary is going to be respected, but sometimes the boundary will not be respected. And then we need a plan B, and there's 3 more things we're going to look at. Now, Jesus actually dealt with this. Jesus set very firm boundaries. He set this with the 12. He set this with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes. Jesus set these boundaries with people that tried to hurt him, people that belittled him. But even when Jesus set those boundaries, people crossed those boundaries. So Jesus actually gives us, like, when Benjamin was reading this stuff, like, this stuff is so countercultural. Jesus is just starting the most important teaching that he ever teaches. It's the Sermon on the Mount. It's Matthew chapter 5. He's just getting warmed up, and all these people, they're used to the Hebrew scriptures. They're used to the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, revenge, even, all that sort of stuff. And Jesus says, you've heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. And now Jesus reinterprets what's in the Hebrew scriptures. He says, but I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting, now here's how you act when you do this, as true children of your Father in heaven. Now here's what God does, okay? And this is just a fact of life. Like, what I'm going to read is true. For God gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and you've seen that. And sometimes to see that, it's kind of frustrating, isn't it? And he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you're only kind to your friends, how are you different from anybody else? Even the pagans do that. But you are to be perfect. We're created in God's image. At our best, we're restored to God's image. You're to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now, here's number 2. Love the toxic person. Okay, so we've set the boundary. Whether the boundary has been crossed or not crossed, what Jesus says to do is to love the toxic person. Now, it's important to look at the Greek word here for love. The word is agape. It's a verb. It's not an adjective. So there's absolutely no implication that Jesus is telling us here to have positive, affirmative feelings toward these people. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, okay, here, love is a verb. It's something that you do. And even if you have to do it through clenched teeth, what I want you to do is I want you to do your best to love that person. And you can remember, like, God loves you despite your own toxicity, despite our own failings. Like, God shows that love to us, and we get to give a glimpse of that love to other people. So what that looks like is when the toxic person at the office comes and has, like, this last-minute thing, and they expect you to drop everything and do it yesterday, what we do is we offer patience with that person. When someone has offended us, what we do with this person is we don't escalate it. We don't make a bad thing worse. We offer this thing called kindness. It's something that, like, we do. And like I tell you what, like, you can't change other people. You're simply not going to be able to do that. The one thing, though, that we can change is the way that we react to them. And the best way, the absolute best way, with those people that are really, the people who are really, really big challenge to us, is to love them. You don't have to like them. It doesn't have to be easy. But just to do your best, say, I'm not going to let you ruin my day. Even though you're not treating me well, I'm going to treat you well. Because I'm treated well by a Father in heaven who loves me. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pray for the toxic person. Now, I want to challenge you, okay? And I'm going to challenge myself this week to do this. I want you to think of a toxic person, someone that is just challenging for you, someone that you're not understanding, someone that might even be like a bully function to you. And what I want you to do is I want you to pray for this person for 7 days. Like I said, I'm going to do this. I can think of a few people, no one in the church, just some people in the community that I don't fully understand. And I think they would probably say the same thing about me. Now, when Jesus says, pray for those who persecute you, I don't think that Jesus is saying that we're going to do this for their wellness. I think Jesus is saying, do this for yourself. Because I've done this before, and every time I do it, like what happens is God softens my heart toward the other person. You know, when I see those persons, the knots in the stomach, they diminish. You know, when I go to bed at night, like they don't have the power over me that they once had. I think that when Jesus tells us to do this, this is for our own freedom. It's for our own well-being. If the other person's blessed, that's great, because they're God's child too. I'm just going to tell you what this might look like, okay? I'm actually going to change the person's name. It would be kind of odd if I called them out in public. Dang, they laughed at that one too. Like, I'm almost done. Just like hang with me. I only got like one more thing to talk about. But here's what it might look like. Lord, I just want to pray for Freddie right now. And he and we've had some misunderstandings. Lord, I feel that he hasn't been very kind to me, but I do pray for him right now. I know he's your child and you love him. And God, I know that I can't change him, but I do pray that you change the way I react to him. I pray the power that he has over me is diminished and reduced and even eliminated. And God, I do pray for your blessings upon him. I don't know what that looks like, but you do. And I pray for that. So, Lord, I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Like, that's all you got to do. It took 30 seconds. Try it for 7 days, okay? Try it for 7 days and see if God does something in you. If he doesn't, you get your money back, all right? Like, seriously, I'll give it back to you, okay? So just try it. You got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose if you do it for 30 seconds a day for 7 days. The only thing you have to lose is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. You know, let's give Jesus a try on this one. This is gospel. Now, the last thing, and this is going to be the most important one. The last thing, number 4, don't let the toxic person win. Don't. Yeah, if someone's messing you up, don't let them mess you up. If someone's getting under your skin, don't let them get under your skin. If someone like is hurting you, don't let them keep hurting you. Don't let them win. I'm going to read you. This is one of my favorite Bible verses, and I use this all the time in different contexts. I think it's perfect to conclude this morning. It goes like this. The thieves, now what I want you to do is insert that toxic person's name where it says thief. You know, the toxic person's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. What they're trying to do, don't let them win, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to steal your dreams. What they're trying to do is they're trying to destroy your hopes. What they're trying to do is they're trying to kill the quality of your life. Don't let them win. Now, Jesus says, I've come. My purpose is to give them, that's us, it's me, it's you. My purpose is to give them a rich and a satisfying life. You know, we don't need this person messing up our life. We need Jesus blessing our life. Now, here's the way this works. Like, I had this conversation with this woman like 5-6 years ago. Now, this is like such a powerful thing. Like, it's tough to translate, I think, into, you know, many. Like, I've never been offended the way this woman had been offended. Never. Not even close. But this was 9 years ago. I preached a sermon at Faith Westwood on forgiveness. She was a part of that congregation at the time. She had since moved away. She was back in town. She was visiting. She asked if she could come and see me. I didn't really even know her very well. But what happened is she was actually sexually abused when she was a teenager into her early 20s. This was by a friend of the family. And she said there was one day that I preached a sermon on forgiveness. And one of the things I said is when we can forgive other people, it's not a gift to the offended or the offending party. It's really a gift to us. Because what forgiveness is it means that this person has hurt us once, and we're not going to let them to continue to hurt us. We're not going to let the toxic person win. And she said when I preached that, she said, well, this is like some young idealistic preacher who hasn't been bitten very hard by life. You know, she kept remembering that, forgiveness isn't for the other person, forgiveness is for us. And so it happened that the guy that did this to her, he actually died a couple years later. Dead of a heart attack at a fairly young age. And now, she's thinking, I can't forgive him because he's dead. He's going to never know. And then she remembered, she said, I remember the day that you said that, like, it made no sense to me at the time, but now it totally made sense. Forgiveness is not for the offending party, it's for me. It's for the offended party. And what it means is like someone has once hurt us, and we're no longer, and forgiveness says, I'm not going to let you keep hurting me. It's done. Like, you hurt me once, I'm not going to let you hurt me again. Now, in this case, like, it's not that easy. I mean, these thoughts, these things, they just don't go away overnight. Forgiveness here is not like an event. Well, yeah, the pastor said it, it's done, therefore he's not going to hurt me. That's not the way it works out. If you've been hurt, like, in any way, in any depth, like, that forgiveness here is going to be a journey and not necessarily an event or a destination. But what I want you to remember is this. Don't let them win. Don't be better, or don't be bitter, get better. Don't be the victim, be the victor. Jesus has come so that we may have life in all of its fullness. Do what we need to do, to get better. Now, if we look at, like, the Last Supper, Jesus had been offended, like, all his life. Like, you get the 3 years in the New Testament. In fact, there was many people sitting at the table with Jesus who offended him. Peter denied him. The other guys, they didn't believe in him as much as they should have. And Jesus looked at all these people who had some toxicity in their life. One of them actually was a tax collector. And he said, hey, friends, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me. Now, later in the meal, Jesus took the wine. He blessed it, and he said, friends, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been poured out for you in the forgiveness of your sins. When you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me. So what I want us to do as we come and take the bread today, what I want us to remember is that Jesus did set boundaries. I want us to remember about the Jesus who loved his enemies. I want us to remember the Jesus who prayed for those people who persecuted him. He did that. When he was dying, what he did is he prayed for the people that were killing him. He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And I want us to remember the Jesus that wasn't going to let somebody else ruin his life. I mean, he had a lot of reasons that he could have had a lot of bad days because a lot of people did a lot of bad stuff to him. But Jesus would not let the toxic people ruin his day. He wouldn't let them win. And as you take the juice, I want you to remember as well that Jesus has died for all of us. I'm going to be honest. I think there's some toxicity in all of us. He has died for all of us imperfect people, all of us who have sinned. And we don't have to live as someone who is overcome. We don't have to live as someone who is full of guilt. We don't have to live as someone who is experiencing shame. We get to live as free because Jesus died for us. And as you take this juice, I want you to remember that you are free. You are free because Jesus says you're free. So let's pray.